Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So last talk I gave was about trying to be wisely circumspect with regard to the teachings which we engage with. I mean, ideally we have our mind open to, a whole range of teachings, Ajahn Chah's teachings, the Buddha's teachings, but there's some of them which we should focus on more specifically, especially if we're, the development of the Buddhist path is one of development, a gradual practice, gradual development. So it's most important to establish, I would say, a good foundation before we get, too advanced, or we try for the ultimates too soon. If we haven't got a stable foundation, we are either going to be disappointed, or it can even be, very frustrating. It's like somebody trying to build a house without a firm foundation. When we were building the new kitchen in New Zealand, we had these beautiful plans. It was going to be a very inspiring building, but for the first 2 months, was just digging a big hole in the ground and pouring concrete in, and digging up pipes and laying pipes and stuff. And I thought, when's this building going to happen? But if you know earthquake-prone New Zealand, it was very important to have a good foundation. And this building was on a little bit of a slope next to a creek in very muddy clay area, so the foundations weren't very solid. In a big flood, it just flows down to the creek. And it wouldn't be, all that money would have been wasted. But eventually the building began to rise up, and now it's quite a masterpiece. With the COVID, you can't go there to see it, sorry. Look on the website for the photographs. But the same with spiritual practice. In one hand, we need its help to be inspired somewhat. So we hear some teachings, we can be quite inspired, but where are we at in our practice? And as I mentioned, it's helpful to be able to establish a good foundation first, and build from that. So just an example with meditation practices. We start off with the basics of mindfulness of breathing, and there are 40 different meditation themes in Theravada Buddhism. When I was my early stages as a monk in Thailand, I had the book out and was checking all these 40 different meditation themes, and which one today? I guess looking back, I was probably bored. Here, ho-hum, breath again. It was something more exciting. But of course, if one doesn't, like I tried to practice metta bhavana. You heard of that before? Meditation on friendliness. And it just didn't work. I would say I didn't have a very good understanding of it, and my practice wasn't stable enough to really continue with it. Being able to radiate well-being, and if your mind isn't very sort of well-being, think, well-being, think, and then after a while, oh gosh, may I be well, please. But at least I could recognize it, back to breathing again and establish that. So what I mentioned about being, wisely circumspect, being circumspect generally means we consider somewhat, but of course, recognizing that we aren't, some of us anyway, are not enlightened yet. Our circumspection is usually somewhat distorted by some degree of delusion. Usually we prefer teachings which are familiar to us, comfortable, and easy. Have you noticed? Not too complicated, not too frightening, not too strange. Especially the easy ones. You'd like to have easy ones, because when you read the book, it's sort of like, there's the just mindfulness of breathing, the 4 absorptions, contemplate impermanence, and enlightenment. That was the first paragraph. So it sounds like it's right there. It's very close to your fingertips, but when it comes to the practice, maybe not quite so simple. It takes longer than just reading a paragraph. So it's why our circumspection then is a bit distorted. That's why I say wisely circumspect, especially trying to find the easy way. One of Ajahn Chah's sayings was, I remember saying this when I was there. He said, "Maknai dayak, lambak daidi." Understand? It's not so easy to translate that one. Something like the easy way begets difficulty, whereas hardships beget good or benefit. Doesn't it sound a bit counterintuitive? What do you mean the easy way gets difficult? I think I understand what he means, because he's talking about the long-term perspective. If you try and take the easy way, it's like a bit like craving. The easy way has no end to it. What's easy today, tomorrow is difficult. So you try an easier way. And then after that is difficult too. So you try an easier way. Try and get easy, and you end up, the easiest thing to do is just give up. And you're back to your old problems again. No further ahead. But hardships or challenges, it's a bit more spiritually correct. Hardship still is a hard one, isn't it? But challenges, if you have challenges, you have to rise above them. Take some effort to get beyond them. So that way you get, you have to challenge yourself, you get a bit stronger, ideally. Sometimes you get defeated, but ideally you get stronger. So that gives benefit in the end. But of course, we need to know just how much challenge we're able to endure. If your mind is a little bit more calmer, stabilized in meditation, you can endure more difficulties because you don't get so caught up with all your reactive syndrome. At one stage, I think it was in Switzerland, giving these retreats, and I came up with the phrase, emotional reactive syndrome. Human beings are just emotionally reactive syndromes. When your mind is calm, we calm down the reactiveness. Most of the time we have some difficulty, the mind spins off into trying to find ways to get out of it. And we have each one of us has our own familiar pattern of reactive syndromes. Some people get angry, some people get greedy, some get deluded and fall asleep or something. You can welcome the 5 hindrances. We all have our escape mechanisms, our reactive syndrome. But when your mind is calmed down, you calm that reactiveness down, and things are different. I'm sure you experience it by now. When your mind is calm, you're chilled out a bit. Things don't quite bother you so much. The croaking frogs and all the rain. So what? Choi, yeah. What do you say? Equanimous or something? Yeah. More like equanimous. But of course, I mean, we, sometimes, like in our forest tradition, we have a whole lineage of great teachers, and sometimes people just try to emulate them. When I was younger, I was very inspired by the life of Ajahn Mun. Ajahn Mun, he's sort of I guess you'd say, he's the grandfather of the forest tradition in Thailand. And there is at least one biography of his around. I forget what it's called now, but biography of Ajahn Mun, huh? Huh? Spiritual biography? Something like that, yeah. So it gives a history of Ajahn Mun, So it can be very inspiring, Oh yes, up in the forests of Chiang Mai, where I was anyway, up in the mountains, sitting meditation, so difficulties talking to the celestial beings and chasing ghosts away, and yeah. But at least it didn't take me too long to wise up that, gee, I don't think I am Ajahn Mun, I figured out, he died in November 1949, you see, and I was born in June 49, so I can't be his incarnation, you see. But he's around anyway, so he's not reborn. So I guess I can't be him. So, but I mean, you have to recognize, maybe they may be kind of exemplary figures, but they had a time and a place. They had their own their own culture. It said when the time of the Buddha, there were 1,250 arahants very quickly after the Buddha was enlightened, you see. So some people say, well, there were those people where they had all the right conditions. They had countless lifetimes of developing their spiritual faculties, and when the Buddha came along, they just took a little spark, and that was it. But nowadays, we're far from the Buddha, so good luck, folks. So some of these, teachers can be inspiring, but they lived in a certain time and place, and the irony is that the purpose of spiritual practice is to get to know yourself. So trying to imitate somebody else, missing the point. No matter how great they were, they did the work. Now it's up to you to do it too. Maybe you can take some examples from them. When I was translating Ajahn Chah's biography, when I first went to interview him, he was a little bit gruff. He said, "Why do that?" I said, "Well, I think I had already planned it." In my answer, I said, "I think people can learn from your examples. Some of the ways he had to face difficulties. One of them I remember, he was out in the forest somewhere, and he was sick. He came down with a fever, and he just flat out on his back. He had no energy left, just lying there, maybe feeling a little bit sorry for himself. Nobody to look after him, and and then he heard this barking deer running away, and he was reflecting, oh, do the deer have a hospital? Do they have doctors to go to? No, they had to look after themselves. So why am I feeling so helpless? I got to help myself. So with that thought, he just rose up and started meditating again, and of course, illness subsided. He lived happily ever after. Of course, I mean, you can imagine it took quite a bit of energy from lying down, totally weakened by fever, to just get up and just keep practicing, you see. Wasn't so simple, but when he changed his mind, you think, oh, what have I done to deserve this? Why do I get sick? Here I am trying to get enlightened and I'm sick. Just feeling sorry for yourself, isn't it? Self-indulgence. But you realize you're on your own. You've got to help yourself. Then you have a different kind of energy arise, So people can maybe learn from these examples, but to try and imitate them is missing the point. So one of the other aspects of being circumspect about the teachings, which are, as I mentioned, they are contextual. You could even go back and say, well, you can get really serious here, maybe even controversial. The Buddha was teaching people in 500 BC, so what can he teach us today? 2,500 years later, we're probably very, very different people, different culture, different language. Buddha didn't speak English. How do we translate even his language? It's another whole topic of translation. But if you recognize he was talking about the human condition, we all face old age, sickness, and death, and we all have to deal with greed, aversion, delusion. Not so different. People even said that about Ajahn Chah. How can Ajahn Chah, who grew up in northeast Thailand, teach Westerners? He said, well, we all have greed, aversion, delusion, and isn't that much difference? Brown skin, white skin, still delusion. And people say, ask why, how could he teach Westerners? Can he speak English? He said, well, he just spoke Dhamma language. He didn't speak Thai or English, he spoke Dhamma language. Most of his teaching was by example. Just living that way of life was an example that it could be possible to live like that. Be a wise person. But trying to make these teachings relevant. They were, the Buddhist teachings were given 2,500 years ago, but they apply to universal issues, old age, sickness, and death. But to make them relevant to us today. So part of it is, trying to how we respond to those teachings as well. One of them I was reflecting upon recently was about, in one of the virtues, it's actually technically one of the 10 paramitas, the 10 virtues of the Buddha, is patience, or kanti barami. And then usually we translate this in English as patience, and it's a little bit, to me, it sounds a bit weak. Be patient. We have, one's like wisdom and concentration, but patience. Not one of my favorites anyway. But in the Thai language, the forest tradition, is translated as kwam oton, which literally means endurance. You have to endure. So that's the general tone that we're given in Thailand about patience. Just endure. Well, I must admit, I'm not a great fan of endurance. I can put up with some things, but not just grit your teeth and endure it, But it was a very important virtue, often mentioned very often in the scriptures and by Ajahn Chah too. But one time must have been when I was in Europe, I guess, trying to explain teachings to Westerners, and they came up with this retranslation that patience was continuity. It wasn't just enduring it, but continuous. Keep going with it. Most people, if they face some difficulty, some can endure it, some can just sit there and carry through. But most people would give up, wouldn't they? Well, maybe not you guys, but some people would give up. But if you translate it as continuity, if I translate it that way anyway for myself, then okay, maybe I do stop for now, but I go back to it. Just keep going. It's a bit like you need to pause sometimes. Just the thought of just enduring difficulties, hardships. What's the wisdom in that? Just putting up with it. But if you come back to it again and again and again, you learn something each time, and then next time you see it from a different angle, like getting a new perspective on it. And if you just let it defeat you in the beginning, you only have one experience of it. And usually you pull out when it's at its worst. And you're suffering the most, you stop. That's your last memory. And they find in psychology that the strongest impression is the last impression you have. It'll stay with you. You can rationalize, oh yeah, it was this and that and there, but that impression will stay with you that, oh, it was just too much, I couldn't take it. So you get, in a way, you get sort of somewhat traumatized by that. So, it's going to be hard to try it again, But if you recognize that this patience is continuity rather than just in sheer endurance, okay, try it this way, that's enough. I'll come back to it again later. With a new perspective, with new energy, maybe, a new approach. Yeah. Sometimes it's just, you're kind of, you bang your head against the wall and the door is right next to it, Your approach is too aggressive, too unsubtle or something. Yeah. And you step back and reconsider. Try another angle on it. So when I translated it as continuity, then, it had a lot more meaning for me, because that's really a key point of spiritual practice, to keep going with it. Yeah. Most of the time, we've been probably conditioned to think, we try something and we succeed, okay, if we don't, give up. Yeah. But come back to it again and again and again. Yeah. Certain persistence, continuity. We actually, when you can do that, you recognize you learn something every time. Even you fail, so to speak, you learn something. You learn your own limits. I had this as a real direct experience when I was in Switzerland, because the monastery is in the middle of the Swiss Alps. And same as here, every week we had we call it a Wandertag. It was a picnic day. But of course, living in the Swiss Alps, most of the time everybody went out for a hike in the mountains. And so that, the experience was, there's various routes to go on, but you have to check many things. You have to check the weather, first of all. Then you have to check your energy level, how much energy you have, because one of the first things you learn in trekking in the mountains is that, you need energy to get back again. Sure, you can be very energetic and inspired to get to the top to have a view, but you've got to get home again. So you got to factor that in, So you got to keep checking how much energy you have left. Because sometimes if you overstretched yourself, it's be very dangerous even coming back. You're in a hurry, you're weak. That's when most accidents happen. People returning in a hurry, or when they're exhausted. Then the weather, you have to keep your eye on the weather too, because it can change very quickly. Don't want to be on top of the mountain when there's a thunderstorm. You're a very good lightning conductor. The human body, mostly salt water, you see. So, just in case you happen to be on top of a mountain sometime, there's a lightning storm, don't go up to Mount Stupa. But several times I had in my mind my plan to go to a certain place. Yeah. There was the one place I could see from my window, this special rock way up on top of the mountain there. I thought, here I am looking up at this rock all the time. Wouldn't it be interesting for me to go up to the rock and look down again at my window, my hut, my room in the hotel, ex-hotel. So one day, I thought, okay, I'll try it. It was about 3,000 meters 2,800 meters, I think. And the monastery is at 1,200. So it was a challenge. I was younger, though. A lot younger. But I recognize, all these different factors, so I just set off, And I was a bit too clever that day, you see. I think the first day I was too clever. The trail went up like this, zigzagging up the slope, the rocky slope, above tree line already. So just rocks up there, squee slope, zigzagging up, and I thought, why go to all that walking when I can go straight up? So I said, forget it. I'll just go walk straight up the ridge here. Go up to the top of the ridge here. I got to the top of the ridge and I realized I'm on the wrong ridge. The trail went that way. And I missed it, went right to the top of the ridge, of course, went to the next ridge. So okay, that was the end of that attempt. There was a big valley between to the next ridge, you see. I don't want to go down that I've come up so far now. So I just walked around there, had my picnic and walked around, explored that area. It was quite interesting. I could see my monastery down there, but it wasn't my plan to be there, but it was good enough. Next time, a couple of weeks later, I tried it again. I'd be really, I won't be so clever this time. I'll just go follow the path. But the path took longer. By the time I got up to within view of the rock, the rain started. Usually about 3 in the afternoon, the thunderstorms come in, you see. So I waited too long now. The path was too long, so I got rained out, so back again. It wasn't until the third attempt I got up there and still had my energy left, and the sky continued to be blue, and I walked up and up and up to the rock, and so big deal. So I can kind of knock on the rock and say, hello, I'm there, I made it. And I even walked up to the glacier after that, up to the edge of the glacier. And it took me 3 times to get up there, but, so what? Every step of the way was still interesting, useful, So the same with spiritual practice. We face it in a way. Sometimes it's explained a bit like, walking a mountain or something, climbing up a mountain, isn't it? There's kind of an imagery of it. What was it? Thomas Merton, I think, had a book called The Seven-Storied Mountain or something, about spiritual practice. Anyway, but it's a bit like that in a way. You don't know what's on top, but each time you go up there, you learn something. Each time you develop your practice, whether you so-called succeed or fail, in the ordinary world, we're here to succeed, not fail, right? Fail's a bad thing. You shouldn't fail. You got to always succeed. But in spiritual practice, there's a different set of rules. If you keep your mind open and can investigate, actually you can probably learn more from your failures. You learn more about the real nature. How yourself really responds, to being a failure, to failing at something. Do you get frustrated? Do you get angry? Do you give up? Your plans have been totally defeated, and how much stamina, how much patience, kanti, have you got to try again, try again, try again? And basically, the more we keep trying, the more we keep with it, we're continuously learning in the process, different aspects of ourself. And one of Ajahn Chah's sayings was, and he said I heard him say it anyway. He said, just one day he said, I can't give you any wisdom. All I can give you is patience. And I felt very disappointed. I came there to meet this great wise man and get wisdom. All he can give me is patience. But then it took me a while to realize the wisdom of that. Because if you can provide the patience, then you keep practicing and you learn your own wisdom. You learn the wisdom of yourself. If he gave us some wisdom, he gave us his wisdom, it's his wisdom, not ours, you see. But providing the right situation, the right environment, giving us the encouragement, the patience, as it were, and we keep practicing, we find out for ourselves. We have our own experience, direct experience, rather than just trying to copy his wisdom, so to speak, You're stealing it from Ajahn Chah, it's not yours. When I was first in Thailand, I stayed at a monastery, a branch of a famous teacher called Ajahn Tiradhammo. And this Ajahn Tiradhammo, he had quite a few, he was a kind of as well as a meditating monk, he was also a scholar monk, so he had quite a few books. And some of them were translated into English. So it was quite inspiring to read. But he had also, because he had this, books in Thai, of course, he attracted quite a few people to his monastery because they could read his books first, you see. They could sit at home in a comfortable place and read the books about it. And so I met some of these young monks who came to Ajahn Tiradhammo's books, virtually. All the teachings, but their behavior was not in harmony with what they said. They would talk about concentration and calmness and be totally scattered, and so I realized, there's quite a difference between reading the book about it and doing it, practicing it. And that was, in a way, that was quite an appealing aspect of Ajahn Chah's teaching. He didn't promote himself. He didn't write anything, actually. His books were only produced from people who heard his talks or translated his talks. He himself didn't write any books. And most of them were about his own experience. And of course, that depends upon, you to really understand it, you have to do it yourself. The highest, I talked about wise circumspection, the highest kind of wisdom is meditation. Bhavana maya panya. That's the highest kind of wisdom, you see. Which means that we have to do the practice and find out for ourselves, the direct experience. When you get the experience, it's deep inside. It really has entered into your being then. You don't forget it easily. Just reading the book about it, if you get a good memory, you can remember it, but time to get to my age, you forget it. All the things I've read, I can't remember hardly any of it. That's why I have to put it down in my own book. People ask me about, certain aspects. I say, well, look in my book about it. I've already forgotten. But the second part of this, the contextualizing, is how that we relate to these teachings at this time and place. So sometimes, especially like translation, I mentioned this word kanti, for example. Sometimes we have to make our own translations. And you recognize, there is a standard translation which we can refer to. I mean, we're quite fortunate to have the Pali language, which, the Buddha didn't actually speak, but it was close enough to the Buddha's language, apparently, Middle Indian dialect. So, some of these words, they contain quite a bit of meaning, which sometimes very hard to bring across in English, for example, or one English word or one translation word. Even sometimes the translation can be misleading. I won't go into the details right now, but it's one of my issues. That's why I have to translate some of these things myself. But if you work, rather than just take them too literally, if you can, reflect and contemplate in your mind that have meaning for you. It's like patience for me is continuity, or kanti is continuity. Has more meaning for me than it does just enduring. Another one, which maybe some people also struggle with a little bit, is the Pali word sattha. Sattha is it's one of the 5 spiritual powers, usually translated as faith. But my experience has been, faith for a lot of people implies kind of blind faith, just believing. And that's not what I understand the Buddha was meant by faith, you see. But I mean, it's just my opinion. I don't know what the Buddha, but I find that if we translate it more like something like trust, if I translate sattha as trust, has more meaning for me. Rather than faith, which has this undertone of blind faith, then we translate it as trust. I don't know what the Buddha said is absolutely true, but I trust that it's true. I have a certain trust that it's true. Then I got to find out for myself. So that trust can become confidence. Where if it's just blind faith, yeah, it's right. We just recite these words, but don't know what we actually were talking about. But trusting in it, we take it on trust. Yes, I listen to it, I receive it. I don't say yes or no, I just say, okay, try it out. And then if it works for me, I can say, oh yes, I have the confidence now, that's right. Otherwise, it's a matter of, you just, it's like having a closed mind. Okay, I take it, yes or no, take it or reject it. But do you really know? You really know unless you've tried it out. So you take it on trust, put it to the test, find out for yourself. And of course, this implies a long-term perspective, because maybe at the beginning we don't really get the point. We don't really understand it in the beginning. Sounds like a good idea. Yeah. When I first starting off with watching the breath, for example, using the breath as a way to focus your attention, to calm the mind. First few times, this doesn't work. I don't believe this. Can't do this. But with patience, continuity, keep applying it, and maybe you notice, and you can't say when. Some people can get quite a positive result quite quickly. Yeah. Others takes a long time. There's one lady I met in England, and she did a different kind of meditation, belonged to a different group, reciting a mantra. And she came to see me because, she was average housewife, didn't look like a, spiritual guru or anything, just an average housewife. She came to me and she was mentioning about her meditation practice. When she does this mantra, she just totally disappears. She just blanks out. Just like that. And so this happened to her in meditation. And then she went to the teacher and he said, I don't know. He said, go see the Buddhists. Because they had this system, a very simplified system where you just recite this mantra, and and for most people they can recite the mantra till they're blue in the face, nothing happens really. But this person, for some reason, just had ability to go into a very, very deep state of absorption. Yeah. So I mentioned that to her. She was just going had very good concentration, could just go into a very deep state of concentration and lost sensation in her body. But she didn't have any mindfulness either, so it was a bit dangerous. But there's some people who have this ability, but they don't know how to harness it in a skillful way. And most people, it takes some effort. They have to train their mind, bhavana, develop their mind. But, hearing some stories, you hear the story of the Buddha, he developed that, so he had success, so it's possible. Maybe I haven't, got the great abilities to do it quickly, but at some time or other, it may all come together. So with a certain degree of trust, we might be able to have the experience that rise at confidence then. But there are many of these key kind of Buddhist teachings which, require some reflection, contemplation, try to make it relevant to your own practice. If you look at the Buddhist teachings in comparison to other religions, for example, there's some very common features. Morality, generosity, metta, friendliness, kindness, compassion. So it's not some really bizarre sect or something other, but it's a matter of applying those to our own situation. When the Buddha talks about his teaching, when he mentions his teachings, it's important for us to, first of all, recognize, who is he talking to? Is he talking to me? Not literally speaking, but does this resonate with my own practice, my own experience? If not, we try it out. Maybe it's too far away from my experience. There's lots of talk in the Buddhist scriptures about deep states of concentration where you can talk to the celestial beings. That's way out of my experience. But in Thailand, many of the meditators, they talk about it quite a bit. Talking to the devas and things, make a big thing of it. Or ghosts, talking to the ghost or something, but it's not my cup of tea. And at first I was a little bit dismissive of it, they must be hallucinating or something, or but then it occurred to me, well, that's just not my experience. Who am I to say that what their experience is, whether it's true or false? Especially there was, in Wat Nanachat International Monastery was built in a cremation ground, you see. And of course, for Thai people, that's really spooky, even to walk in there. They wouldn't walk in there at night, would they? No. Even in the daytime, they have their amulet in their hand, recite Bhutto, Bhutto as they walk to the kitchen, And if you walk around in the forest, you see these stakes in the ground where they had buried the bones of bodies that have been cremated, you see. There's even a story of they buried a few bodies there, that people who died very violently. One young man fell out of a tree and died very quickly, so they have a theory that you have to allow the consciousness to understand it's died, you see. For a very, very quick or violent death, some people their psyche is shocked. They say their consciousness is shocked. They don't know they died. So then they go run and haunt the family or something. So they usually would bury the body for a few years and then they cremate it or something. So anyway, these people were talking about this and talking about ghosts and all this, and nothing. I had no fear. I was just so dense, I didn't sense anything, so there's no problem. No, but one day, one of my friends, monk friends, we were talking, and he says, "Can I tell you something?" He said, "I had this very strange experience. I was resting in the daytime around his hut where he was staying. There's lots of these stakes in the ground. It was a very popular cremation spot, you see. So but his hut was right there. So he was saying he was resting in the daytime, and something pulled his foot. It woke him up. So he looked up and nobody's there. What pulled his foot? I shouldn't talk about ghost stories at night, should I? No. You have to get back to your place again, don't you? It's all just in your mind, right? Anyway, there were a few of these little stories happened. Not by just by ties either. So, who knows? Yeah, really don't know. So it's just not my experience. Not my. I'm not familiar with it. So, but I don't dismiss it. Yeah, maybe. Yeah. But we keep an open mind. That allows the possibility to learn about it anyway. Just trying to say no or yes or no, becomes a belief system. When somebody asked Ajahn Chah if there are, they finally asked him bluntly, "Are there ghosts?" He said, "Depends what you believe." It's all in your mind. Believe there are ghosts, there are ghosts. He puts that kind of suggestion into your mind, and then you start seeing them. You see it when you believe it. So if we try to apply these teachings, to our own practice, it also implies that we have a certain degree of awareness of our own body-mind. We have to be able to recognize, where we're at, what is rather than compare our progress to, some standard in a book or something. We observe our own mind as recognizing what the qualities are, what it's in the foundations of mindfulness, recognizing the states of mind. But being very honest and open about it. Yeah. Buddha gave us, once we can recognize, it's like once we get the right symptoms, we're clear about the symptoms, we can get the right medicine for it. It's like we recognize what the real hindrance is, we can do something about it. The Buddha gave us these tools to use. It's all based upon cause and effect. That particular state of mind has a cause. When we recognize what the state of mind is, really clearly, we can find out what the cause is. And then there's a cure for it. There's some various methods, techniques, tools, attitudes we can use to deal with it more skillfully. But if you aren't really clear what the situation is in the first place, you don't know what your illness is, as it were, you can't find the right medicine for it. You get the wrong diagnosis then. And maybe in the beginning of practice, kind of the irony is that in the beginning of practice, our mindfulness isn't so strong, even though probably, our states of mind are, pretty extreme maybe. But as practice develops, they get more and more subtle. You need to increase your degree of mindfulness. The more subtler levels of the mind are harder to recognize sometimes and hard to read. Sometimes you have to revert to the body. Sometimes your body expresses these states of mind much more clearly than your mind does. Your mind trying to observe your mind. But if you look at the body, maybe there's a more clear expression of it. How does greed, aversion, delusion express itself in the body? The body to me is sort of, I say it's kind of dumb in a way. It's not so sophisticated to come up with all kinds of, kind of answers and excuses and reasons, just is this way, if you can learn to read it. So these teachings, even though they came from 2,500 years ago, they're still relevant today. Rather than just trying to imitate them and follow them, imitate them or have some kind of concept about what they are, we can apply them to our life, see how they work, see if they're relevant to you at this time in your practice. This requires quite a bit of wisdom, wise circumspection. Yeah. So wisdom is the key to it. So we have some challenges ahead. Wisdom doesn't just drop into our lap. We need to work on it. So you got lots to do, or lots of homework. So I'll leave that for your reflection.
Sadhu, 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 Namo